From Wen's death being more tragic than the teddy your mom ruined in the washer, to Eric sacrificing his life like a goody two-shoes, here are the movie's biggest changes to the book. Starting with Leonard not being the last to die in the book. Meanwhile, in the movie, Leonard dies at the very end. That too by his own hand. It all happened after he tried to convince Andrew and Eric to make a sacrifice for stopping the apocalypse. Of course, it didn't happen like that in the novel. On the contrary, in Tremblay's novel, Sabrina is the one who killed Leonard before she commits suicide. The order of Redmond and Adrian's death is still the same though, but Adrian's murdered by Andrew instead of being killed by her associates. Now, if I had to guess, Shyamalan probably saved Leonard's death for last for good reason. Maybe because he had the most influence on Andrew and Eric. Who knows? Now that's not the only difference, because both Andrew and Eric stay alive till the end of the book, and we see Eric sacrificing himself, which is what stops the apocalypse from happening in the movie. But it wasn't like that in the novel, because if you take a look at Tremblay's novel, both Eric and Andrew make it out of the home invasion alive, and Eric doesn't let Andrew die no matter what.
Kristen, for the first time with a young actress playing our daughter, was also really exciting to me.
Meanwhile, Shyamalan's film understates Eric and Andrew's love for one another. Either way though, Eric's death towards the end was a very suspenseful moment in the movie. Yes, even though what we saw wasn't what happens in the book. Now, apart from that, there's another major difference. Wen is killed accidentally in the book, even though that's not how it happens in the movie. The movie makes it obvious that Wen's life was never in any sort of danger. Neither Leonard nor his associates, or Eric and Andrew for that matter, had any plans of killing Wen. And there wasn't any reason for them to kill her anyway. Plus, it would have been cruel to kill off the only child in the movie, right? But Tremblay's novel does exactly that, and it ends the book with Wen's death. Even though it was accidental, it still happens. It happened during a moment when both Andrew and Eric were fighting for control of a gun. Why? Because Eric didn't want Andrew to have a gun after killing Adrian. But eventually that fight for control of the gun ends up with a bullet going straight through Wen, killing her in the process. It was one of the darker parts of the novel which absolutely nobody enjoyed, not even me. Meanwhile, in the movie, Wen survives, and Eric even has a vision of her life as an adult. That's a huge difference from the book. To be fair, Wen could have avoided seeing a lot of bloodshed if she died accidentally like in the book.
It really makes me happy. And actually, later on today, we're going to go see a Broadway show together. We're going to go see Wicked. Wow. I'm so excited.
That's probably not a good thing for a child to see as she's growing up. But hey, what can you do? Now, in the book, after Wen's death, her parents don't sacrifice themselves like they should have. So instead, Eric makes the sacrifice. This was because he was opposed to everything and rejected the idea of any deity that kept asking for more, especially after everybody had already lost everything. But in the book, here's the kicker. Andrew manages to talk him out of it. They both then go out in the world and face everything together, even after knowing it's all going to come to an end eventually. To be fair, they have a slightly similar discussion in the cabin, but this one ends in Eric's death. But just before this happens, Eric explains that Andrew had to be there for Wen. Not to mention, we got a small peek into the future where both of them were happy together, even when he was gone. Now, I'm not sure if this is the truth or not, but what happened after Eric's death was slightly different in the movie. After Eric is gone, Andrew heads out to search for Wen, from where they find a car and head out into the world, beyond the cabin, not knowing what they might find out in the world. Now, some might argue that Eric's death did save the world, because after Andrew and Wen drive away, something changes. They come across a diner where they watch the news about how all the terrible things around the world had stopped in their tracks.
Be a parent, you know, and I think that's what we did. We really were like a trio of three friends.
This probably means that Eric's death worked, but there's still no guarantee of that though. And in the movie, both Wen and Andrew couldn't help but think that his death was in vain and that he would have died anyway. So when they both return to their car and the music they were listening to during the beginning starts to play, This shows us the cost of all that has happened. Then, after sitting in silence, unable to talk about the pain both of them were going through, they carry on driving in the world. Now, this is somewhat similar to the novel. But what's extra about the movie's story is the fact that the man they loved may have given his life for nothing. Moving on, get this. The apocalypse doesn't actually stop from Wen's sacrifice in the novel. Eric's death stops the apocalypse in Knock at the Cabin, sure. But Wen's death in the novel doesn't. Now, why's that? You'd think that a child's death would be the ultimate sacrifice to end the apocalypse. But it doesn't. So this forces both Eric and Andrew to rethink everything and the whole invasion. Not gonna lie, Wen's death was a big sob moment. But whatever visions Leonard and his associates had proved to be wrong in the end, because Wen's death did absolutely nothing. Eric and Andrew start thinking about what kind of higher power they're doing all this for, who wouldn't even stop after an innocent child's death.
The film, to me, even though it has these huge themes, it's very hard to answer what it's about. For me, it's a love story. It's a love story between a family.
This was a very dark ending if you compare it to the movie, because the movie has lots of hope for Wen and how she'll go on to do amazing things when she grows up. So killing her off wouldn't have made any sense anyway. I'll stand by the movie for this one because it was heartbreaking witnessing an innocent child die like that in the novel. Thankfully, the movie focused more on Eric and Andrew's love for each other, which automatically included Wen into the narrative. And I don't know about you, but I prefer the movie more honestly. Because there's one more thing that the movie did better. It explained the apocalypse in more detail than the book. I mean, sure, the ending of the movie left us all guessing about the apocalypse, and if all that had happened was a coincidence or not. Gotta be honest, that was kind of a bummer. With that being said, Knock at the Cabin did have more of a conclusive ending, because all the catastrophic events stop, which makes it seem like Leonard and his associates were telling the truth. But then again, Andrew and Wen are left confused about what happened. Now, I understand that this was less of a conclusion and more of a question of whether what happened was right or wrong. Look at it this way, though. The movie was better in terms of the ending because after Wen dies in the book, it doesn't stop the apocalypse at all, and it leaves the readers hanging. That shouldn't fly, right? Because neither does the apocalypse stop, but we don't find out if the home invaders were telling the truth, or if the apocalypse was even real to begin with. In the end, I guess both the movie and novel have their own strengths and weaknesses. I like the movie more though, just saying. These were the biggest changes between the Knock at the Cabin book and movie.